Welcome back to the Black and Raw podcast. I'm your host, Tino Koda Tondarai Vunzabaya. I'm going to repeat that. Here is a podcast that's creating the dialogue and the space for black men to be their most authentic selves. Now, in celebration of the 75th anniversary of the Windrush, I will be speaking with someone who I'll definitely call an expert on the Windrush generation and the Windrush diaspora's experiences. And my guest today is Rudi Page. And Rudi is a management consultant for Making Connections Work. And you're going to hear a bit about what Making Connections Work is. But in terms of for Rudi, he's a man that is very passionate about communities, very passionate about improving the systems that we all live and exist in or know someone that works in, such as NHS, such as the council, such as charities, such as other organizations. And you're really going to hear from Rudi today in terms of about the experiences of the Windrush diaspora and how the Windrush Scandal impacted him and how it impacted people around him. You know, Rudi felt a real passion for wanting to make change when he heard about that Windrush Scandal. And so you're going to hear about his views on it. And, you know, for those that don't know what it is, we explain a little bit about that as well and add some historical context to Windrush. And we talk about so much more in this episode. We talk about what he does at Making Connections Work. We talk about some of his favorite projects that he's been a part of. And we really have a deep dive into the experiences in his life as well. And so I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. I really enjoyed talking to Rudi. Rudi's a fantastic person to talk to and work with. So I really hope you guys enjoy this conversation. I really hope you get some great value out of it. And before we get started, all I want to say is thank you very much in advance for listening. I hope you are subscribed to this podcast. If you're not subscribed, then hit that subscribe button now. And drop a like, drop a comment. Tell me what you think of this episode. Tell me what you think of the stuff that we're talking about. You know, maybe your views of when you heard about the Windrush Scandal. You know, I'd love to hear whatever you guys have got to say. So I'll put them down in the comments in the comment section and let me know. So here is my conversation with Rudi Page. So Rudi Page, welcome to the Black and Raw podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. Great to be here.
Definitely. I'm glad to have you on. I know this has been a podcast. We booked this quite a while ago, but you're a very busy man with Windrush and everything that you do as well. So I'm glad I got the time to sit you down and have this conversation.
Thanks.
So Rudi, I just guess for people that are listening to this episode, we actually met at the Windrush Film Festival press event, which was really interesting. Actually, I really enjoyed just the whole experience of it all, and I was glad I came and got invited. Met some other wonderful people too, and yeah, it was a good day. That was.
Yeah, a good networking, and it shows networking works.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, now I've got a job with you. So, and yeah, we're working together. Now you're on my podcast as well. So yeah, networking does work for any of those listening. So I wanted to, before we get started, in terms of we're going to be talking a lot about Windrush today, and you do a lot of work within the community of Windrush and the Caribbean community. And I just wanted to say congratulations on the, what do you call it? The Points of Light Award.
Points of Light Award.
Yes, which is recognizing your work within the Windrush, and you know, got that nice little signature from the PM as well. So that's good. How are you feeling about that? Like,
Very good, because it's recognition for the contribution that's being made to the bigger picture. So I think recognition is important. So great, but the work continues.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess for you, you would have came to the UK, or you would have at least been here around the time when when the first Windrush boat came here. I mean, it was not the only boat, but Windrush was the first boat. So I guess, what does sort of being a Windrush child mean to you? Like, what does that even mean, if you can?
Yeah, we'll start at the beginning. So the Windrush generation, which is really the first generation in terms of Caribbean people, in terms of mass migration to this country, So that's basically anyone between 1948 and 1971 and their descendants. So we have the Windrush ship itself, which left Jamaica on the 24th of May and arrived here in the UK at Tilbury Docks around about the 21st of June, and then they disembarked on the 22nd of June. So that's the recognised Windrush Day, the 22nd of June. So I would be known as a child of the Windrush generation because my father came from Jamaica and my mother came from Montserrat, and I was born in the UK. Even though those of us who are described as children of the Windrush generation, many of us are grandparents now. So, so we tend to use the term Windrush descendants.
Okay. No, that's good. No, that's interesting. And yeah, I guess you gave a little bit of a history back there for people to know what the Windrush was. And it was also the British, not their attempt, but their need for people, to rebuild society after World War II. And
That's right.
so it really was sort of a, welcome here. Come and help us rebuild our society. Which, there's not controversy, but
There always will be, because one of the challenges, of course, and narratives always give challenges. That's why it's important to actually understand the context of history, and maybe as well where we as individuals and as a community stand within that context of history. So Britain needed to rebuild after the war, so it needed a lot of labor. It still had colonies around the world, as well as the Commonwealth. So where better than to get labor to rebuild Britain than from that vast pool of people around the Commonwealth.
yeah, definitely. It was quite a not easy for them, but they're like, oh, we have so many colonies, guys. Let's just bring them all over here and see how it works.
Life is always a little bit more complicated than that.
Yeah, definitely. I guess for your parents and for you as well, what were some of your experiences in being in the UK around this time when there was an influx of Jamaican and Caribbeans and people from all the different colonies?
I guess what we have to think about, there's the experience of my parents, but there's also the experience of us who are children. So I'll talk about my experience as a child growing up in London and the surrounding areas, basically. And so the challenges were that we faced a lot of discrimination, but some of us were fortunate in that, we were good at something. Mine was sports and good at defending myself, and actually getting, and was determined to get along regardless. So even though I describe my childhood as one of trauma, football and reggae, that's how I describe it.
Interesting mix, isn't it?
Absolutely. But nevertheless, the determination was always there to succeed. So not a great childhood, but made it through childhood anyway. And there were many who didn't make it for various reasons. So that means there's a mission to perform. So
Yeah.
that's the way I've always looked at things.
No, I think that's quite a good mindset to have, and especially for those coming and, being a child of the Windrush, being a descendant of the Windrush, you came to a time where there were signs which said no blacks, no Irish, no dogs, So just from that sign alone, you can tell of the tensions that were there within the society. And so I think that's quite revealing in terms of what you've been able to tell me there. Do you know much about the experiences of your parents? Did they ever talk to you about those things?
I know of the discrimination that they faced. And the other important thing is that generation who came over in the 50s and 60s primarily were young people. So they were between 18 and 25. So they themselves were young, and many of them, including my mother and father, had never been anywhere at all in their lives, and not even around the islands, off the island that they originally came from. So traveling so many thousands of miles. So they faced discrimination, but again, they were determined to make their way in the world. And as children, you just had to go along with it. We didn't see and understand particularly the discrimination that they faced, because I think parents do their best to hide it from children, or tell or show the determination to the children that they're going to keep going regardless of what the barriers are. So we didn't see it, but we understood that the environment wasn't particularly friendly, but it wasn't always unfriendly. That's the thing. We still made friends, still ran around the streets, played football in the streets, and did all those things that young people do. So we did that. But yeah, the environment, and going back to my point about the context, and then my generation growing up, by the time we got to the mid-70s and into the 80s, then there was a lot of riots and a lot of civil disturbances, and a lot of it aimed at particularly the Caribbean community. At that time was the largest community. The African community didn't come in great numbers till probably around that time, actually. So we didn't have a lot of African brothers and sisters growing up with us in the early years. That's my generation. Now my children's generation, they certainly did. So there was a big mix there. So the pressure was really on the Caribbean community in the 1970s. And a lot of the equality laws that are enforced today are as a result of much of the sacrifice and the campaigning by the Caribbean community at that time, and with their allies as well. So as a young person just entering the world of work, we couldn't miss the difficulties and the discrimination, because we then had to go to work and find jobs.
Yeah.
And that's where you start to then really understand what your parents may have been going through. That even though they may have tried to warn you, until you experience it yourself, it's a whole different matter.
Yeah, definitely. You can't, like, yeah, someone will always try and tell you something, and you can only then, when you experience it for yourself, you're like, oh, damn, yeah, I see what they meant. Like, even nothing as serious as what we're talking about in terms of the experiences of the Caribbeans in the UK. But people always tell you, oh, university is the best time of your life. Make sure you enjoy it and stuff like that. And we're like, really? And then when you go to uni, you don't really feel it. But then when you leave uni, you're like, oh, damn. And then I found, me and my cousin, we were talking to my little brother, and we said the exact same thing to him. So we were like, oh my gosh, we became those people. We're telling him uni's the best time of your life.
Of course. Yeah, and again, that experience that you've kind of stated there is still important for you to pass on to the next generation. And then it's for the next generation, whether they listen or not, or whether any of us listen or not. And when we experience it, then we say, right, okay.
Yeah, I see what you guys meant.
Understand. Yeah.
Definitely.
And sometimes that's life, that we have to learn some of these lessons. We have to learn for ourselves anyway.
Yeah, I think the best learning you can do is usually through experience, isn't it? Because it's just different from when someone tells you something to when you're actually going through it, and then it sort of clicks in your head. It's like, damn, that's what they meant. Like, oh, okay, and I now see.
Yeah. Because the other quick point to that is that when we were growing up, it wasn't illegal to discriminate against somebody because of the color of their skin, as they perceived.
Mm.
It wasn't illegal. Whereas, of course, now there's lots of policies and laws in place. Obviously, there are still challenges, but in those days, it wasn't illegal to deny people of service and a quality service based on color. So again, the environment was very, very different.
Yeah, I can imagine. You guys the Caribbeans, and in your diaspora, you guys set the path. You when us Africans came, you guys had done a lot of the legwork. Because yeah, we did come late. I know a lot of Zimbabweans came around the 2098s, and I think Nigerians were probably coming before that as well. So Britain's a very multicultural, diverse place right now, which is sort of expected, when they had a huge ass colony and the empire and everything else. They had to they sort of reap what they sowed. They went everywhere, and now we're coming to you guys.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to actually get your views, because it is the month of Windrush, and I think it is important to sort of highlight the experiences of the Windrush diaspora, and even the ones that came during the 40s. And we recently I say recently, it was about 12 years ago, but I'm sure the effects feel quite recent in terms of with the Windrush Scandal. And I think you'd be much better be able to explain what the Windrush Scandal is, especially as you're working with the people. So could you just tell my audience what it is for those that don't know?
Yeah, I've done quite a lot of work in this area. So the Windrush Scandal really broke about 5 years ago. In fact, as we were about to celebrate Windrush 70, and what it really was is that in the days of in that period, as I mentioned, between 1948 and 1973, many young people came up on their parents' passports, because in those days, they were, of course, they were British. They had British passports, and then over the years, the laws were tightened and made it much more difficult in terms of what you needed to do was register in a way, and then get British citizenship. And as the laws changed and tightened as it related to immigration, some people from the Windrush, these are the children, again, these are children born in the Caribbean, particularly Jamaica, who'd come up on their parents' passports, then had challenges in actually finding documents, because the stipulations and the conditions now were very, very tight indeed. And if you could not prove your status according to the new rules, then it meant a withdrawal of employment, health services, education, and housing. So that put a lot of people in, as you can imagine, in serious situation. People were deported. So people maybe, who had lived in the UK 30, 40, 50 years had challenges around that. So you can imagine what then that meant. People who had been living here and then came back to the country as normal. They'd been going back and forth for years, were denied entry. So, and it turns out that the government, issued an apology eventually to say that the harshness treatment should never have happened. And so over the last 5 years or so, or particularly the last 2 or 3 years, there's been the Windrush compensation scheme, which is designed to address that situation. But it's still a very difficult and painful process. And of course, it had a major impact on the Windrush generations and their descendants. And we're still going through it now. But the Caribbean community are resilient, you know, and there's been a lot of work to support those who have had these challenges. Lots of events and activities to ensure that they receive the correct information, advice, guidance, and support. So I've been involved on that side since August 2018, when I first got involved. And then over the last 2 or 3 years now, I've got much more involved on the celebration and the recognition of the contribution made by the Windrush generation and their descendants.
Yeah, it's quite a I don't know whether sad is the right word to describe it, but when you hear about it, you're sort of just there, you get a bit angry, you're just a bit like, these people have been here for 50, 60 years of their lives, have contributed to the rebuilding of England, you know, with the subways, I'm not American, and the London
Well, everywhere,
Undergrounds,
yeah.
yeah, transport, the health service, you know, these are people that have
education, social services, the prison services, wherever major public service institutions exist in this country, you'll find a significant amount of Caribbean people and others, but we're focusing on Caribbean people, have made their contribution, even in mines as well, mining as well. We don't hear much about that. A lot of people working in the mines.
Yeah. I never knew that either, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
That's something I'm learning today right now.
Yeah, it's a significant amount of people.
So yeah, so you know, you guys have been benefiting, you've been, you know, supporting this country and rebuilding itself to be the city. I'm just thinking about London, to be the country it is now.
Yeah, and if you think of it as well, is that those early generations had children. They sacrificed for the children as well. So that also was very painful to know that that their children and their grandchildren have now been impacted by this by the Windrush scandal. But there's again a lot of activists within the community working with allies to address the situation. It's not easy, but you can't give up.
No, definitely. And I think, as we've been highlighting, you know, the Caribbean community are one resilient community, and one that really favors and thrives on family. And, you know, so I think, you know, for anybody that is willing to put the fight up, it's definitely you guys. So, and yeah, like you said, there's allies as well. And I feel like probably any Black person, any African that heard the Windrush probably was just maybe they can't be as just as annoyed, but like, well, like, no, that's wrong. Like, you can't be doing that to people of your society, you know, especially those that have provided so much for you.
Absolutely.
So yeah, the Windrush scandal. Yeah, I'm glad that, you know, the government made an apology and that they're at least trying to work on it now. But I think there is a lot of I don't know if anti-British sentiment there is, but
there's suspicion, of course, but then there'll always be suspicion over institutions, whichever country you want to talk about. But again, we have to work through it and ensure that the people who need help get help. That for me is the most important thing.
Yeah. What were some of your thoughts when you just heard about the story breaking and even working with people that had been a part of that?
Well, my first thought was I have to do something about this to support people. So what I did in August, or it would have been about May, June, about May, June time in August 2018, I contacted the Home Office. I created a project that would ensure that we would use our network of churches. Church of God of Prophecy is one of the major Pentecostal churches set up in the 1950s, that we would use our churches to partner with the Home Office so that they could provide, or they could bring their staff in after the church services on a Sunday and provide the information, advice and guidance about the Windrush compensation scheme. And what we used to say to our congregations as well, that you may be okay, but think of those who may not be. So please pass on this information. So our program was about get the facts. And what we wanted the system to do was improve the information, advice, guidance and support to those who've been impacted by these decisions. And these decisions had gone over a period of time as well. So it wasn't just sudden. So some people have been suffering without their voices being heard. And the celebration this year in terms of Windrush 75 is probably really the first time the Windrush voices are really being heard in all aspects of life, their creativity, the contribution that they make, an expression of what they can do in all areas of life, not just sports, not just music, but the arts, the culture, business, communication, a wide range of activities that we've now seen take place, and even having the monument that was unveiled last year at Waterloo. All these things are a significant recognition of the contribution of those generations who've passed.
Yeah, and it's good that it is being celebrated, that it is being recognized, and that you're saying that the voices of these people are being heard. And even with the project that you're talking about, I mean, that sounds fantastic. Like, especially getting people after church, like a perfect time to sort of get the whole community, and in a place where that okay, we've got them here. Just give them the information that they need, and they can be informed.
It's a familiar setting, comfortable there. It's a safe space. So I thought it was important for the representatives of the institution to come to the familiar, safe space where the community is.
Yeah, and for them to come to you guys, because that's quite important. That it's not people going to them sort of trying to find out this information, because it can be hard. Anything related with government, it can be hard to find what you need to find. So I definitely think that was a great part of it.
Trust is really important. If people don't trust, then they're reluctant, or they won't go, even though it might be in their best interest. But trust is important.
Yeah, and there probably was a fear of like, I can't go to the Home Office and ask.
Absolutely, there was an absolute fear, because at a moment's notice, your life could just change immediately. And this happened to people. They would go into work one day, and they would be asked to come into HR and just be told, well, we can't employ you anymore. And for some people, that was the first time they actually realized that they had a problem.
And that's
serious the problem was.
Yeah, and that's quite a scary thing to come to, like your whole livelihood, your job, your finances, that you're stuck, isn't it? At that point, you're like, oh my gosh. So it's an awful thing that happened, and it is good in terms of the work that you're doing, the work that others are doing, and the government and their response now. It's a positive upside to it, and then it's also quite good to be able to celebrate these things too.
Yeah, because we must go on regardless.
Definitely. And so I wanted to pivot a little bit It won't even be pivoting that much because you know, for anyone that's watching this on video, you got MCW community service, making connections work. And so I want my audience to know what is making connections work. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Right. So making connections work. So by background, by professional background, I'm a management consultant and I specialize in policy implementation. So I started off in the world of sales and marketing, advertising. So I've always been involved in creative activities that are about communication. So making connections work, that's what we do. We literally do that. We make connections work. So it can be in institutions, it can be systems, it can be individuals, it can be in the health system. We do a lot of work in the NHS and public health, community economic development, work with faith communities, work across the diaspora as well, both the Caribbean and the wider African diaspora. So we're very much about community empowerment and the well-being, and everything operates through systems and structures. And we advise how best to achieve the stated goals. And the term we use, implementation is key to attainment. So we're all saying it's about delivery. You know, what is your mission? You know, it's all about goals as well. I've got very much a football interest in football since I was a youngster. So you know, getting the ball across the line is really important. So I use that a lot when I'm working with people. I'm always talking about getting this across the line.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't look great, but every goal counts.
No, that's true. It's quite a simple analogy as well to just kind of think about it, isn't it? And everyone, like football's a huge game, so it's not like it's a very niche metaphor. Everyone gets it, and the people that you're working with can understand where that's coming from. And the name is as simple as it needs to be. It says what you're doing, which I really like. Because yeah, I think you were saying everything works on systems and trying to improve them. And so I think, you know, working with the NHS, working with faith communities, working with all these organizations, it's definitely a great way to, you know, uplift our society. Because we're all in these systems, we're all affected by them or work in them or know someone that works in them. So I think that's really a great sort of mission or goal that you guys are trying to achieve.
You make a good point, because I say to people, we are all part of the system or systems we're trying to change.
Mm.
So that's why we work on a set of values. So our guiding value is what we say, the values of respect and inclusion are the common ground for all, regardless of background, culture, or status. And values are really important when you're building relationships, networking, and building trust, collaboration, trust, cooperation to reach your goals. And these elements shouldn't be taken for granted.
Yeah, definitely. I think those are definitely some noble values and can be very good sort of guiding principles for you guys in whatever you're doing, because it's something you can always refer back to in terms of, are we achieving this and how are we achieving this, or how are we helping someone else who's working with us achieve these goals and these values. And you always hear about when people, just in general, about self-improvement or even just knowing yourself, is like, what are your values? And I think that's important for ourselves, for organizations, for families, for how you want to raise your kids. You know, it's everywhere really. And I think it should be.
It really is. And again, it's, can we uphold the values we're trying to impose on others?
Mm. How do you uphold the values that you're trying to impose on others?
That's the challenge.
Yes, yeah.
Upholding the values that we are trying to impose on others. So a good example, as I said at the beginning, about the values of respect and inclusion is the common ground for all, regardless of background, culture, or status. And sometimes we like to pick which background, which status, culture to suit ourselves. And of course, that's where the challenge comes in. Can you uphold those values that you're trying to impose on others? It can be quite complicated, especially in, when you're working in systems and trying to work out the complexity in terms of why people are unhappy, or why isn't the team gelling? And we go back to the analogy, football, getting the ball over the line. Why can't we get the ball over the line?
Yeah, the whole team's not gelling together, We've
We've
got
got
some
the best
players over
players.
here. Yeah.
Or, we're doing well and we haven't got the best players. And some people are saying, well, why are you guys and girls, why are you winning? But you haven't got the best team. What's the secret?
Yeah, we're gelling together. We respect each other. There's
Culture.
there's always that.
Yeah. Regardless of background, we're able to blend our cultures so we get the best talent that is around, and everybody's trying, and everybody's unique contribution brings us a synergy.
Yeah.
So a lot of our work is thinking about what we call cultural synergy, because it's a great tool for communication and achieving objectives.
Yeah, definitely. There's the NBA finals just finished up, and there's a team called the Denver Nuggets that won, and everyone is sort of looking at them and be like, yeah, they're the best team, but like really they've definitely got they've got one of the best players in the world, and they've got someone else who's really great, but the whole team really is what led them to that championship. And I think that is just sort of a metaphor for working with any team, that you need contributions from every single person, and you need people to be selfless and to accept their role and how they can be best in their role. And there's so many metaphors for sports that you can look at in life and be like, yeah, that is how you run a good team, in business and in life. So I do love a good sports analogy.
Yeah. And even if the other important thing in terms of this sort of world we're in now is that your team might not all be directly employed by you, or in your organization. Your team can be multiple stakeholders as well, in your value chain or in your supply chain. And increasingly that is the case because of the use of technology. And what binds everybody together is the fact that we can be on the same platform. But then how we conduct ourselves and how we get along on that platform. And again, some people are really good, they're able to move to music now. The conductor and the orchestra play great music.
Yeah, and it needs everybody else to do their roles, and you're leading from the front, but you're also bringing everyone together.
Absolutely, you got it.
So I'm sure you've worked on a numerous amount of projects, and you gave one earlier about the Windrush project that you worked on. So I'm not going to ask you for your favorite project that you've ever worked on, but I just want to know, what are some of the projects that you're most proud of?
There's a number of projects that I'm most proud of. Would be many years ago. Everybody at some point would have heard or even visited Afro Hair and Beauty. So that's the major hair show, or was the major hair show for many years. And I was the sales and marketing manager of Dyke and Dryden. And I won a trip to Atlanta after being the top salesperson in Europe for
Nice.
a couple of American brands. And my boss at the time, Mr. Dyke, said, we want a major trade show in this country to show that we're serious business people. So I won this trip to Atlanta, went to the Bronner Brothers show, and that was 40 years ago. Not sure you were even around 40 years ago.
No, I wasn't.
I just looked at how the Americans sold products, the music, the fashion, the style, and came back and named the show Afro Hair and Beauty, because that was the language at the time. And so that was a great program for me. And then a few years later, I remember doing a big project to do with Mary Seacole, and that was in the NHS. I was a project manager for one of the major health trusts, Guy's in St. Thomas. And that was, again, the blend of culture, community, health. We had some young people come over from the Caribbean, nursing students, and they spent a week of work experience in the hospital, depending on what their particular discipline was. And that was turned into a complete sort of lecture series. There was also an exhibition, the first Mary Seacole exhibition, that was held in Florence Nightingale Museum.
Can
So
I
that was
ask
great.
who, for those that don't know who Mary Seacole was, could you just give us a little bio about her?
Yeah, great question. So Mary Seacole was born 218 years ago in Jamaica. And she was around during the Crimean War. So she left Jamaica and worked around South America, came over to England and found her way to the Crimea and nursed 6 soldiers. She was an entrepreneur, so she actually created a business as part of that. So she's very well celebrated, Mary Seacole, with lots of information on her. So I was really proud to be appointed as the project manager for the Mary Seacole Bicentenary. Yeah, and so I've done lots of projects that have been good for the community. One of the good projects that I was happy about, the NHS Blood and Transplant, or NHS BT. I helped develop a campaign to promote blood donations, blood donation amongst the African and Caribbean population groups. Did lots of activities. I was then able to, as part of that project, able to facilitate 4 mobile blood collection units to go into the Caribbean health systems, which was great. So that was Antigua and Barbuda, Grenada, Jamaica, and St. Lucia. So that was a great outcome. So it wasn't just about individual activities, but also focusing on the system as a whole.
Yeah, no, that does sound really good. And sort of from what we've been talking about, and from a bit of what I know from you, your work sort of spans the UK and the Caribbean. And so I guess, why is it important to you that your work impacts those in Jamaica, but also with those in the UK?
I think I believe in the community where I come from. And I also believe, as mentioned, in that wider contribution to society, that we make our contribution and we should be recognized for it. And even some of the work that I've done in Africa, in South Africa and Ghana. In fact, this year I'm celebrating the 20th anniversary when I first started to work in South Africa.
Wow.
So some of the young people who I mentored 20 years ago will be coming onto a platform later on this year. And we're actually going to be hearing from them what they've done along the ways. And and some of the people that we've worked with. So I think for me, culturally, it's very important to be an important, or to make an important contribution that brings the African and Caribbean together as a family. We are a family, and then play our role with wider society in terms of improving things, improving the well-being for all communities. And there's a simple framework that we use. I've got a regeneration background as well, community empowerment. So our focus is, it's about inspiring inclusive, peaceful, caring, enterprising neighborhoods and local communities. So that's the framework.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that in terms of, you're talking about the community and, wanting to uplift the community, that, the community spans geographical borders. You've got the community here, you've got the community in South Africa, Ghana, the Caribbean. So it's really about wherever the need is. There's plenty of need, but you've got to focus on what you can. But really, that you're trying to really improve the lives of people everywhere.
And we share the learning, and that's the great thing with our approach, is that it's about knowledge transfer. And I'm going very quickly back to the question you asked about another project I'm very proud of. I worked within Imperial College London, and my role was to help facilitate the first race equality advisory group within Imperial College London as a university. And of course, it's a world-class university. And so part of my role was to do that. But I said to the staff that, yes, there are challenges for you within this institution, but compared to the young people in some of the poorer areas of London, then I think that you should also make a contribution, because you're in a world-class institution. And there was agreement, and we created a program called Creative Futures, which was led by a Dr. Sunday Popaola, who's a Nigerian. And that was about encouraging young people to come in and spend the day at Imperial, feel what it's like to be in a world-class institution and be inspired. And it wasn't about them just going to university, but be inspired in a new environment. And also it was important for the teachers as well to come. So they raised their expectations, young people raised their aspirations, and that over 10,000 young people have been through all the various activities now. It's great how that program has grown from just 28 young people in the beginning. I was involved in the launch of the program in Jamaica with Dr. Sunday Popaola. He's taken the program to Trinidad, and he's regularly in Ghana and Nigeria every year, taking hundreds of young people around the STEM subjects. He's very creative, so it's very exciting for the young people. And that was just from a simple idea where I said that, because I believe in servant leadership. It's important that if we have made our way in the world, and we are now we now have a certain level of freedom, it's important that we go back and improve the situation for those who are still in the place where we once was. And if we can't or don't, or if we're indifferent about improving their lives, at least don't make it worse than it is now.
Yeah, if you're not going to do anything about it, just don't make it worse. But do something about it is the main message from that point.
Absolutely.
And I think I agree with you in terms of that, because I do think that our place here on earth is to make, to make it better for the next generation coming up, and the journeys and the trials, the tribulations that you guys have been through, and that my parents have been through, that our elders have been through. You guys are passing that on to us, so we necessarily don't have those challenges, but whatever challenges we do have, we're well equipped to deal with, and we are then hopefully going to be doing that for the younger generation coming up above us, and it just makes everyone better. And
or at least don't make it worse.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so I wanted to know, in terms of, all the work that you're doing is absolutely fantastic. And I'm so glad I ended up getting to meet you, Rudi, because hearing about this and even working with you, it's been great. And listening to some of the conversations that you're having with other people about prostate health, and meeting with ambassadors and talking to them about their life experiences. You're doing what you preach, and I wanted to know, what do you want the legacy of your work to be? Or do you not care about legacy? Some people don't care about legacy. Some people want a legacy. I don't know. What do you want the legacy of your work to be?
I always joke with my children, and I just say, on my gravestone, just put, I did my best.
Rudi, you're doing more than your best, my friend.
Yeah, that's just the only way I look at it. I've done my best. What I always say. Yeah, I've done my best.
No, bro. I think you're doing more than your best. Just from everything that we've talked about here, and from everything that I know about you, yeah, you're doing a pretty good job. I don't know if you plan on stopping anytime soon. I don't think so.
No. I haven't got every ball over the line yet.
Yeah. That's good. And so I wanted just to ask you a final question that I always ask all my guests. And if that is say if there's a young Black boy listening to this conversation, how can something that help them with an understanding of themselves?
That's a great question, because we all face that in the context of living in this country, in particular, given its past and given the context of the community that we come from. Again, our social, financial status, all these things count to some extent. So my advice all the time is that, you have to be determined. You have to be disciplined in terms of your self-discipline. It's important to have character, because sometimes when things don't go your way, if you keep your character, there'll always be somebody who will watch you and see how you respond. So in other words, your attitude to the situation. And then you may get the assistance that you're looking for. You have to have courage. The world is a challenging and competitive place, so courage is important. And then finally, faith. Faith in yourself and faith in the Almighty, I think, is really important. So determination, discipline, character, courage, faith.
Nice. You came with a 5-point plan. I love it. It's simple. And yeah, no. So Rudi, thank you very much for coming onto the Black and Raw podcast. Hopefully this is the first of many. And yeah, I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye.
So that is the end of the episode. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, guys. I really enjoyed talking to Rudi, and I think everything that he said throughout this episode is amazing. Like, you can really tell that Rudi's a person that practices what he preaches, and that all the stuff and all the projects that he's working in are really part of those values and the values of community and values of equality and inclusion, and regardless of background, you know. And so I really think that is amazing, and I, like I said, loved talking to Rudi. Rudi is a really great person to know and work with, so I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you want to find out more about Rudi, I'm going to put all his links into the show notes. And if you want to find out more about Black and Raw, if you want to tell me what you thought of the episode, you know, just go onto my social medias at Black and Raw on everything: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and my website is www.blackandraw.co.uk. And so I think that's it. I don't think I have anything else more to say to you guys other than thank you very much for listening. Please subscribe, and we'll talk soon.